An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
How was he threatening Border Patrol? You've collected the evidence, you said, right? You have the handgun in your possession?
That's right.
And how was he using that handgun in terms of threatening Border Patrol? What was the threat? He had his camera, right? He was filming it.
That's something that I will let the DHS and the prosecutors, because they are the ones investigating that case. I don't want to stylize that evidence, but I trust the men and women on the ground who are trained professionals to only use it when it's absolutely necessary. And I trust Secretary Noem's leadership.
Have you seen the body cam video? I was unaware you had.
You know what? It's going to exonerate all the agents. You're completely right. Stephen Miller saying an assassin tried to murder federal agents, and this is your response. And J.D. Vance retweeting it says something about where this administration is and how they're considering it before and after the murder of Alex Preddy. And this will go down in history as a turning point for this. Greg Bovino wouldn't be leaving tomorrow if an innocent person wasn't killed. And the double standards that are being employed for how you have to behave versus how these agents have to behave is mind-boggling to me. Kyle Rittenhouse was a conservative hero, right, for walking into a protest, actually brandishing a weapon. But this guy who had a legal permit to carry and already had his gun removed, to some people, I guess, is some sort of instigator when he was actually going to help a woman who had been pushed down and tear-gassed by ICE. We have the right to protest. That should be upheld and respected, and it is not being.
What do you do when the federal government is essentially obstructing justice at the state level like this? You have your database, but what can you do to hold people like this officer and others to account at this point?
First of all, it's more than a database. We created something called the Illinois Accountability Commission. It's headed by retired federal judges who are gathering testimony, including video, including, as you said, a database of all the information that we have. Why? Because we are going to hold them accountable. And yes, it's true. When Trump and J.D. Vance are saying that these federal officers have absolute immunity, they do not. But they do if the president is going to pardon them or not hold them accountable while he's president. You know what? He's not going to be president forever. And having the information in order to come after those people, to make sure that they are held accountable when the time comes. I know it's not good enough. I'd like to be able to hold them accountable today, but it is true that the Supremacy Clause makes that very difficult for states. So we're gathering the information because in 2029, in January, Gregory Bovino is going to have to answer for his actions. Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, and frankly, the line officers that are abusing people and in some cases shooting people in the face, they're going to be held accountable one way or another when this administration goes away.
Just to hop on Mr. Bovino, what message do you have for him?
Bovino's a disgrace. I've never seen. I was mayor of my city for 8 years before I got to Congress. I've worked with law enforcement. I had 800 police officers in my department. Police departments have worked hard to try to regain the trust of people. Body cameras, de-escalation training, independent investigations, understanding that use of force is not what you immediately go to when you are dealing with the public. And what Bovino has been saying, the way that he is putting an officer that is involved in any type of officer-involved shooting should not be immediately put back onto the street, which is what Bovino is saying he is doing. The automatic defense before an investigation, these are basic law enforcement rules that any police department in any big city that's trying to do the right thing puts in place.
I am going to read an affidavit that was just filed by a witness who tried to administer aid to Alex today. They were a doctor, and I think we need to amplify these voices. I am a 29-year-old resident of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I have lived in Minneapolis since 2024 when I moved to the city to begin my medical residency. I am a licensed pediatrician and I have been practicing pediatric medicine in the city since I moved here. On January 24th, 2026, at approximately 9 a.m., I was awoken by the sound of cars honking and whistles blowing. Shortly after I awoke, I heard screaming from outside my window. I saw several ICE agents and civilians yelling at each other. One civilian was standing in front of a parked car on the side of the road. I saw him yelling at ICE agents, but I did not see him attack the agents or brandish a weapon of any kind. Suddenly, an ICE agent shoved him to the ground. My view of the altercation was partially obstructed, but after a few seconds, I saw at least 4 ICE agents point guns at the man. I then saw the agents shoot the man at least 6 or 7 times. Initially, I was stunned. From what I could see from my apartment, there was absolutely no need for any violence, let alone lethal force by multiple officers. I immediately put on my boots and coat, ran outside, and approached ICE agents who were near the victim. The scene was chaotic. Many civilians were screaming and honking. Over the noise, I informed the ICE agents that I am a physician and I asked to assess the victim. At first, the ICE agents wouldn't let me through. They repeatedly asked me for my physician's license, which I obviously didn't have. But none of the ICE agents who were near the victim were performing CPR, and I could tell that the victim was in critical condition. I insisted that the agents let me assess him. Normally, I would not have been so persistent, but as a physician, I felt a professional and a moral obligation to help this man, especially since none of the agents were helping him. Finally, one agent agreed to let me assess the victim. He patted me down to make sure I didn't have a weapon and then let me approach the victim. As I approached, I saw the victim was lying on his side and was surrounded by several ICE agents. I was confused as to why the victim was on his side because that is not standard practice when a victim has been shot. Checking for a pulse and administering CPR is standard practice. Instead of doing either of those things, the ICE agents appeared to be counting his bullet wounds. I asked the agents if the victim had a pulse, and they said they did not know. I then asked the agents to make space so I could assess the victim. The victim had at least 3 bullet wounds in his back. I asked the ICE agents to turn the victim from his side to his back. From that position, I saw an additional gunshot wound on the victim's upper left chest and another possible gunshot wound on his neck. I checked for a pulse, but I did not feel one. I immediately began CPR. Shortly after I started compressions, EMS personnel arrived and took over. I remained at the scene for about 5 more minutes, but protesters began to gather and the situation seemed to be escalating, so I left and returned to my apartment. When I returned to my apartment, I was extremely distraught. I was sobbing and shaking uncontrollably. Eventually, I called my sister who lives in a nearby suburb. I called her for comfort and because I did not feel safe in my apartment. I wanted to see if I could stay with her for the day and maybe even a few days. There's more to this affidavit, but I think it really speaks to itself. And I pray for this person, and I pray for everybody in Minneapolis.
If you're like me, you probably watched a video of the murder of Alex Preddy and thought to yourself, why the is my government killing people with my tax dollars in my name? I was in Minneapolis last Monday, and I remember hearing the jarring sounds of whistles that you hear at soccer practice. On every corner has become the sound of an imminent ICE raid. That's what it sounds like when your government occupies the city in your country instead of funding your health care. Now, it's not lost on me that Alex Preddy was a nurse who worked at the VA, a VA that has been massively underfunded. And if that's not a metaphor for how our country is working under Donald Trump, I don't know what is. You've got literally somebody who's spending his life taking care of veterans in an institution that exists to take care of people who served their country that is being underfunded. And instead, You've got ICE, an agency that is being funded to the tune of $185 billion that killed him because he was willing to videotape them, because we have First Amendment rights in this country. I've been very clear, we've got to abolish ICE, because if we believe in our Constitution, ICE is everything the Constitution was intended to protect you from. This can't be retrained, this can't be reformed. This is a rot at the core of an agency that has been told that somehow it is above the law, and nobody should be above the law.
So the hosts over at Fox News and all the other right-wing outlets are twisting themselves into knots, trying to find a way to spin the latest ICE murder and the fact that they're piling up. And the two big ones that the whole country's been paying attention to isn't even the total sum of the people that ICE has killed. At the end of the day, throwing Bavino under the bus doesn't change the fact that ICE as an institution needs to go away. You know, America was doing just fine before we had ICE. We'll do just fine without them, particularly considering the fact that severely underqualified law enforcement officials are part of ICE as they poured billions of dollars of resources into the agency, recruiting 10,000 plus people. And who are these individuals who are joining ICE? You know, police academy dropouts, you know, people who play video games all day long, live in their parents' basement, not doing nothing to get up out of it. All of a sudden, they have an opportunity to make a lot of money by kidnapping people off of the streets. The Democratic Party needs to do everything they can to be pushing to abolish ICE. There's no reason to be talking about, oh, well, they need to be better trained. Now, forget all that. ICE needs to go. This is not the time for Democrats to be on any type of milquetoast platform. Unfortunately, that is always a result of corruption. But this is really sinking Donald Trump, along with everything else. But, American citizens, particularly white American citizens, getting shot down in the streets by ICE agents, it doesn't look like it's going to stop because the people who are a part of this organization are just a bunch of losers with face masks on. The irony of the change of the times, right? But the Democrats, again, need to be on a platform to abolish ICE, nothing less.